This is an escape as audacious as it is embarrassing for the prison services. Daniel Khalife
is still on the run after clinging to the underside of a food delivery van.
Daniel Khalife committed some extremely serious offences. I like to think of him as a bit of a Walter Mitty character.
Keep an eye out for this man. Do not approach this man, is the advice from the police.
Daniel Khalife was a fantasist. He sent Iranian spies sensitive information.
I'm one of the most intelligent people. I won an award. I am better than everybody here. I am more intelligent than everybody here.
On the morning of the 7th of September 2023, Daniel Khalife's name and photograph were splashed across every major news outlet in the United Kingdom. Overnight, the 23-year-old former British soldier's daring escape from prison had catapulted him from relative obscurity to the subject of a nationwide manhunt. Newspapers, television broadcasts, and social media platforms were awash with images of Khalife's youthful face, his military background, and the details of his prison break. The public was captivated by the story of how this young man, accused of spying for Iran, had managed to outwit the security measures of one of London's most notorious prisons by strapping himself to the underside of a food delivery truck. As the country woke up to the extraordinary news, little did they know that Khalife's escape was just the beginning of a tale that would involve espionage, terrorism charges, and a dramatic 4-day pursuit through the streets of London. His story is a complex tale of ambition, ego, naivety, deception, and espionage that culminated in one of the most high-profile cases of treason in recent British history. The life of Daniel Abed Khalife began on the 27th of September 2001. He was born in Marylebone, a bustling area located in the city of Westminster in the heart of London. He spent most of his childhood growing up in the environs of West London near Richmond Park in Kingston upon Thames. His family background, a blend of Iranian and Lebanese heritage, played a significant role in shaping his early years. His mother, an Iranian immigrant, held a deep-seated aversion to the Iranian regime, a sentiment echoed throughout Daniel's maternal family. This disdain for the ruling powers in Iran stemmed partly from their secular beliefs, a stark contrast to the strict religious doctrines enforced by the regime. Daniel's maternal grandparents had immigrated from Iran in 1995. His grandmother was a primary school teacher in Iran, and his grandfather an accountant at Tehran University. Daniel's early life was marked by the absence of a stable father figure. His Lebanese father was a fleeting presence, often reappearing only to cause disruption and turmoil within the family. He was described by Daniel as not a good person who would pop in and out, do some damage, and then leave. His father's sporadic involvement left a lasting impact on Daniel, manifesting in negative behavioral changes, particularly affecting his performance at school. This lack of a consistent paternal influence, coupled with the challenges of being raised by a single mother, undoubtedly contributed to a sense of instability during his formative years. Despite the adversities he faced, Daniel's immediate family, comprising his mother and twin sister, was close-knit. His mother worked at a clothing shop and later in a bank. She was a strict disciplinarian, which Daniel ascribed to her upbringing in Iran. She seldom allowed him to go out to the same extent as his friends, leaving Daniel feeling somewhat socially isolated. Growing up in an affluent area led Daniel to have feelings of shame about his mother's modest means. He later said that this caused him to form fake friendships at school. Real or not, when he was 15, Daniel and a group of classmates got into trouble with the law. After learning about magnets in science class, Daniel got the idea to use magnets to remove security tags from items in a shop. He and his friends put this plan into action, successfully shoplifting by using magnets to detach the tags. Unfortunately for them, one of Daniel's friends was caught in the act, while the others, including Daniel, managed to evade security. Daniel soon returned to the shop, feeling a sense of responsibility to face up to his wrongdoing. While he wasn't ultimately convicted of any crime, Daniel was required to attend a course as part of a youth offender program. His mother, wanting to instill in him a greater understanding of the world and the consequences of his actions, took Daniel and his sister on a trip to visit Iran. The aim was to expose them to different living conditions and help them appreciate their own Western privileges, even though they came from a low-income background. In spite of his brush with the law as an early teen, and even though he was fidgety in school and found it difficult to learn in the conventional way that English schools demanded, Daniel managed to pass 10 GCSEs at Teddington School. In the US, this would be almost the equivalent of completing the 11th grade with good grades in 10 subjects. He was also a budding athlete, excelling at the 100-meter sprint, thus earning himself the nickname of Bolt from his classmates. The void left by his father's inconsistent presence and his restrictive home environment created in Khalife a craving for something more, a yearning for freedom and escape that would ultimately lead him down the path of infamy. In September 2018, just 2 weeks before his 17th birthday, Daniel Khalife decided to join the British Army. For him, enlisting meant a new beginning, a semblance of independence, and a chance to forge his own ambitious path. He would later say that it was an act of patriotism to the country of his birth. His initial aspiration was to become a member of the Parachute Regiment. With its image of real soldiering, combat and action, Daniel saw this as the quickest entryway to joining the British Special Forces. He saw the regular recruitment campaigns and advertisements by this branch of the military on TV, which instilled in him a particular fascination for the most elite military units. However, a chance encounter with a senior soldier during his initial army training steered him down a different path. Recognizing Khalife's proficiency with computers, the soldier suggested he consider the Royal Signals. The Royal Corps of Signals is a combat support arm of the British Army that provides essential communication and information systems for military operations. Considered the digital backbone of the Army's command and control infrastructure, the Royal Signals is responsible for establishing and maintaining telecommunications networks, managing cyber operations, and ensuring secure information transmission. This felt to Khalife like it was right up his alley. When he learned that a role within signals intelligence could equally provide a pathway to the Special Forces, he chose this route instead. Daniel's early promise within the Royal Signals was undeniable. He excelled in his 23-week basic training course at the Army Foundation College in Harrogate, which he completed in February 2019. The following month, Khalife commenced his specialist Phase 2 training at the Defence School of Communication and Information Systems in Blandford Forum, Dorset. This year-long program was crucial in developing his expertise in military communications. During this period, Khalife obtained security check level clearance. This is one of the highest levels of security clearance in the United Kingdom, granting him access to secret classified material and occasional access to information marked top secret. In March of 2020, he was posted to the 16th Signal Regiment in Stafford. There he displayed a natural aptitude for the technical intricacies of communications and demonstrated a strong work ethic. His dedication and quick learning earned him recognition, including in December 2020 being awarded Best Junior Soldier. He was clearly a rising star within his unit, as this was a prestigious honor, and one that was rare for an Army signaller to be awarded. He excelled in particular in his mastery of the Falcon system, a sophisticated deployable communications platform used by the British Army and the Royal Air Force, and which is vital for secure battlefield operations. Khalife's rapid proficiency with Falcon garnered him praise from senior officers, even prompting memes of Daniel being described as a master falconer within his unit's WhatsApp group. His superiors recognized his potential, and in February of 2021, he was selected for a coveted posting abroad. The opportunity to participate in Exercise Warfighter at Fort Hood in Texas marked a significant milestone in his military journey. During his time in the US, Khalife continued to develop his skill with the Falcon system, and was granted an even higher security clearance, that of NATO Secret. His ability to perform above his pay grade and to absorb knowledge and skills with remarkable speed further impressed his superiors. For all this, he was promoted to Lance Corporal in September of 2021. Upon his return to the United Kingdom, he was selected for Phantom Troop, a specialized unit dedicated to the Falcon communication system. For Daniel Khalife's army career, it seemed the only way was up, and his early success fueled his ambition to progress further within the army. Yet beneath this veneer of success, a simmering discontent began to brew within Khalife. His ultimate aspiration was to further specialize in signals intelligence or join the Special Forces comms, elite units that represented the pinnacle of his profession. However, a conversation with his commanding officer about his future aspirations cast a shadow over his promising career. Khalife was advised against applying for the Special Forces because of where his parents were from. He was told that due to his Iranian heritage, obtaining the highest level of security clearance, known as developed vetting, would be an uphill battle, and stood to potentially jeopardize his dreams of joining the Special Forces. His British citizenship notwithstanding, Khalife's Iranian heritage did represent an obstacle that he would have to overcome. Although not officially an enemy of the United Kingdom, the relationship between the UK and Iran was at the time, and remains to this day, highly strained due to geopolitical tensions. The UK has imposed sanctions on Iran for supporting Russia's war in Ukraine and for its ballistic missile program and nuclear activities. Individuals with ties to Iran understandably are subjected to increased scrutiny. The vetting process for the highest levels of security clearance involve extensive background checks, including family connections and potential conflicts of interest, which could raise security concerns for someone with Iranian heritage. This explanation, if it was offered to Khalife, was to him of little comfort. The perceived rejection was a devastating blow to the young soldier who had set his sights on reaching the pinnacle of military service. The knowledge of this barrier became a seminal moment in the life of Daniel Khalife. What he saw as a rejection not only crushed his immediate career goals, but also seemed to challenge his sense of belonging and acceptance within the military structure he had come to embrace. The frustration and sense of injustice he felt stemming from what he viewed as discrimination was a major blow to his ego. At this point, Daniel Khalife had two options: continue to excel in his role and seek promotion in the ordinary course, or take more drastic steps in gambling on his future. By this point, you can guess which path he chose. Driven by a desire to prove himself worthy and overcome the obstacles in his path, his next decision would ultimately overshadow his legitimate accomplishments and lead to the unraveling of his once promising military career. This is, however, where the timeline becomes a little tricky. As early as October 2018, some years before the realization of his career roadblock, Daniel began searching for intelligence-related material online. On its face, this would seem normal for a person interested in pursuing a career in that realm, but was in fact the first evidence of more nefarious intentions. All the while that Khalife excelled in his role and gained the trust of his fellow soldiers and commanding officers, he was secretly planning and initiating contact with foreign entities. In December 2018, when he was still in basic training, Daniel created a series of email accounts using false names. Then, in April 2019, mere weeks after obtaining his SC security clearance, he created a contact on his mobile phone with the Iranian dialing code of +98 and the identity IR. This suggests that long before he realized his career challenges, he was already planning his betrayal. Khalife had decided he would devise his own intelligence operation whereby he would act as a double agent by pretending to spy for Iran, but in reality would be serving the interests of the United Kingdom. This, at least, is the story he later told. He took his initial inspiration for this plan from a BBC interview with a double agent for Al-Qaeda that he had watched on TV. This, combined with his existing hatred for the Iranian government, so he said, fueled his belief that he could make a difference by infiltrating Iranian intelligence networks. He thought that pulling this off all on his own would sufficiently bolster his resume to compel the British Army to promote him further. Khalife took his first concrete steps in starting his double agent operation in April 2019. This is about a year before he would learn that he would face additional challenges if he wanted to make it to Special Forces. His first step was to somehow establish contact with the Iranians. Khalife had read news reports about a US servicewoman who had defected to Iran with the help of a group called the New Horizon Organization. Following this lead, Khalife discovered that several individuals associated with the organization had been sanctioned by the US for their alleged links to Iranian intelligence and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Among them was a man named Hamid Kashgavi, the Secretary for International Affairs for the New Horizon Organization. In him, Khalife saw an opportunity. Using Facebook Messenger, Khalife sent a message to Kashgavi in which he posed as a disgruntled soldier willing to betray his country for financial gain. To his surprise, Kashgavi responded, and their online conversations quickly escalated, migrating to the encrypted messaging app Telegram. Khalife knew that he needed to gain credibility and to convince the Iranians of his access to classified information. He did this by fabricating secret documents using publicly available information from sources like WikiLeaks and declassified CIA documents. He created dossiers, briefing papers, and even forged letters from senior government officials, all designed to appear authentic and to entice the Iranians into a clandestine relationship. The Iranians seemed to take the bait, expressing great interest in the information to which Khalife said he had access. He was soon put in touch with the person who was to become his handler, a man he knew only as David Smith. Then, having a handler, Khalife was beginning to believe that he had a real knack for espionage. Khalife did not hand over any information for free. He arranged several cash pickups, including one in August 2019, where he collected £1,500 at a dead drop site at a cemetery near Mill Hill Park in Barnet, North London. The cash had been stuffed into a dog waste bag and left for him to collect. Having completed his first dead drop, Khalife's confidence soared to new heights. He thought it was an opportune time to make contact with British intelligence to tell them of his success. Making his way to an Apple store in Covent Garden, Khalife hoped to find a way to contact MI6 anonymously. He created a new Gmail address using a false name and composed a message to MI6, explaining his actions and offering his services as a double agent. He hit send, a surge of adrenaline coursing through him. He had taken a leap of faith, entrusting his fate to the shadowy world of intelligence. Now all he could do was wait. For the next 2 months, Khalife obsessively checked his inbox, hoping for a response from MI6. He likely imagined being whisked away to a secret location to be debriefed and congratulated by seasoned intelligence officers. But as the days turned into weeks, his hopes began to dwindle. Had his email been intercepted or even reached its intended target? Had MI6 dismissed him as a crank? He knew he was playing a dangerous game, and the fear that he might find himself on the losing end began to bubble to the surface. Taking in his stride the rebuff that was the silence from MI6, Khalife decided to press on. As time passed, he developed a strong rapport with his Iranian handler David Smith. With communications intensifying starting in the middle of 2020, there was even talk of a clandestine in-person meeting. After the subject of a possible meeting was raised, Khalife sent an image of a USB stick with a key fob number, followed by a screenshot of a Ministry of Defense laptop displaying classified information marked secret. He also shared 2 photographs of the Sentinel Selex handset, a communications device used by specialized UK forces. It seemed that Khalife was buttering up his handler by showing him the sort of intelligence to which he had access. By August of 2020, the Iranians had seen enough to decide that a meeting with their new agent would be worthwhile. The idea was for the meeting to take place on neutral territory. Istanbul in Turkey seemed the natural choice. Khalife booked a plane ticket 2 days after discussing the trip with his handler. Khalife's passport, passenger locator forms, and pictures taken at the Hilton Hotel in Istanbul would later serve as evidence of Khalife's presence in the city. After the meeting, Khalife sent a voice message to his initial contact, Hamid Gashgavi, saying that he had handed over a package in Istanbul and boasted about how he had made off with the equipment from his barracks. The package, it is believed, contained the USB drive he had photographed earlier, and which was used for army cryptography. The item had mysteriously gone missing from Khalife's army barracks. With the trip to Turkey having been an apparent success, and talk of another meeting one day in Tehran, Khalife decided it was time to up his game. When he was posted to Fort Hood in Texas in 2021, he began gathering all the intelligence he could get his hands on relating to the Falcon system. Within 3 weeks of his arrival, Khalife started taking photos surreptitiously of secret information displayed on open computer screens, including network details, specifics about a new Falcon system iteration, and a password record sheet. During the period of February and March 2021, Khalife took at least 29 pictures of sensitive equipment on his phone. Since he had received no response from MI6 to his initial email, he sent a second email a few months later, reiterating his desire to work as a double agent and claiming he had provided the Iranians with leaked information from WikiLeaks disguised as new intelligence. He again received no response. In the latter half of 2021, contact between Khalife and David Smith continued at a steady pace, with Khalife and Smith communicating on an almost weekly basis. He continued to apply pressure on his handler to agree to send him to Tehran for training in spycraft, as evidenced by a conversation he recorded on his iPad.
I wanted to have some training from you guys, and I think the best training for me is inside of Iran. I'm one of the most intelligent people. I won an award. I am better than everybody here. I am more intelligent than everybody here.
As he tried to convince Iranian intelligence of how smart he was, Khalife continued to gather information for his handlers. He got his hands not only on sensitive information relating to specialist military equipment, but also about army personnel. In late 2021, an Excel spreadsheet was shared to a WhatsApp group of which Khalife was a member. This spreadsheet, which detailed the names and ranks of soldiers who had been successful in a recent promotion round, included, against all security protocols, sensitive information about certain members of the British Special Forces. Ordinarily, the identities and ranks of Special Forces soldiers are not published due to strict security restrictions. Khalife was only too delighted to have received the information. Exploiting this security breach, he jotted down a handwritten list containing detailed information about 15 of the Special Forces soldiers, including their service number, rank, and surname. It was the specific units these soldiers belonged to that made the information particularly sensitive. They were each members of highly classified units, the SAS, the Special Air Service, and the SBS, Special Boat Service. Using the information from the Excel spreadsheet, Khalife then gained unauthorized access to the Army's HR system called the Joint Personnel Administration System. There he gathered further personal information relating to 7 of the Special Forces soldiers, all of whom, due to the sensitivity of their work, are part of what is known as a protected population in the Army. In October 2021, Khalife attended another clandestine meeting at a cemetery in Kensal Green, North Kensington. During this meeting, he received a cash payment from his Iranian handler, perhaps his compensation for providing information about British Special Forces and its personnel. The next month, in November 2021, 2 years after attempting initial contact with MI6, Daniel Khalife decided again to get in touch with British intelligence. He had hoped that MI6 would see his potential as a double agent, but his attempts had been met with radio silence. Now, he believed, it was time to try again, this time with MI5, the British Domestic Intelligence Agency. On the 9th of November 2021, Khalife acquired an unregistered mobile phone. He knew he needed to be cautious. He dialed the number of MI5, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. When a voice answered on the other end, he made a request to remain anonymous. For the next 15 minutes, Khalife laid out his story, a narrative spun with threads of truth and fabrication. He told the call handler that he had been in contact with Iran's Secret Service for 2 years, passing them documents in exchange for cash. He admitted to downloading some secret-looking documents from WikiLeaks and passing them off as genuine intelligence. Khalife's story seemed to have the desired effect. The MI5 call handler assured Khalife that they would pass on the details of their conversation to the relevant team and that a decision would be made on how to proceed. Relieved but not entirely satisfied, Khalife waited for a response. The days stretched into weeks, and still there was no word from MI5. Khalife's anxieties intensified. Fueled by a nagging sense that time was running out, he decided he needed to make contact again. On the 22nd of November 2021, he again called MI5. The call handler listened patiently as Khalife recounted the key points of his previous call, adding further details to bolster his credibility. He said that he had since deleted the Gmail account he had used to contact MI6 because he was afraid of compromising his identity. The second call ended with a similar promise to pass the information on to the relevant team to consider and follow up. Yet again, Khalife was left in a state of limbo. Little did Daniel Khalife know that MI5 was actively working to identify the anonymous caller. Meanwhile, in late 2021, diplomatic and political tensions between the UK and Iran were reaching new heights. The focal point of these pressures was Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, a British-Iranian dual national who had been detained in Iran since 2016. Zaghari-Ratcliffe, a charity worker, was arrested at Tehran's airport as she was about to board a flight back to the UK after visiting her family. The Iranian authorities accused her of plotting to overthrow the Iranian government. The pretext for the charge was that she used her job at the BBC World Service Trust to recruit and train people to spread propaganda against Iran. The charges against Zaghari-Ratcliffe were widely seen as politically motivated, with her British husband maintaining that she was imprisoned as leverage for a £400 million debt owed by the UK over its failure to deliver tanks and other armoured vehicles to Iran in 1979. Although the Shah of Iran had paid £650 million to the UK, the arms deal was scuppered after the Iranian Revolution. How Daniel Khalife fits into this broader political picture is that negotiations for Zaghari-Ratcliffe's release from prison were reaching their crescendo towards the end of 2021, and Khalife's handler was looking for inside information about the UK's position. Khalife had no access to any information related to this issue, and so decided to create a fake intelligence document on his laptop setting out the UK government's stance on ransom payments. The document falsely claimed that a meeting had taken place between a UK minister and the Iranian deputy foreign minister, stating that the UK would never negotiate or pay ransoms. This hardline stance, presented by Khalife as official UK policy, directly contradicted the reality of the situation. At the time, the UK government was in fact engaged in delicate negotiations that ultimately led to Zaghari-Ratcliffe's release in March of 2022, following the repayment of the £400 million debt. In addition to meddling in international affairs, around this time Khalife was also gathering information about UK intelligence capabilities as regards unmanned aircraft systems or drones. In December 2021, the same month that he made contact with MI5, Khalife was stockpiling classified documents relating to the use of drones that could be of value to Iranian intelligence. At this time, he was also researching flights to Tehran in the expectation that he would be making another in-person meeting with his handlers. While Daniel Khalife was running around playing the spy, MI5 had reported the matter to the police, who were confident that they had identified their would-be double agent. Although having used an unregistered mobile phone, the police were able to identify Khalife by tracing the number he used to make the calls. As soon as their suspect had been identified, British authorities swooped in to arrest Daniel Khalife on the 6th of January 2022 at Beacon Barracks in Stafford. He was not immediately charged and was subsequently released on bail, allowing him to return to his barracks and continue to serve in the military while the investigation ran its course. His release on bail was like a lifeline to Khalife, but he knew that it was only a matter of time before the full extent of his activities were discovered by investigators. Over the course of the next year, he was interviewed by the police 3 times and then was told the case had been passed to the Crown Prosecution Service. With this in mind, on at least 2 occasions following his arrest in 2022, Khalife visited the Iranian embassy in London, seeking to obtain an Iranian passport. This suggests that he intended to follow through on his plan to travel to Tehran and, in the circumstances, possibly to permanently defect. The net was quickly closing in, and he knew it. Worried that investigators would find incriminating evidence in his barracks room, Khalife decided to take drastic measures. He constructed a fake bomb using nitrous oxide bottles taped together with wires protruding from the top. He placed this device prominently on his desk in his room, leaving alongside it a handwritten note purportedly from his handler, which said that the only options available to Khalife were to commit or to defect to Iran. Opting for the latter option, Khalife then absconded from the Stafford barracks at the start of January 2023 and failed to report for duty after his Christmas break. When the device was found by some of his fellow soldiers, they were not particularly alarmed and did not immediately report what they had found. Only after several days of Khalife being missing were the police called to investigate. When they did arrive, a 100-meter cordon was put in place until an explosives expert could confirm that the device was not a viable IED. Daniel Khalife spent approximately 20 days living out of a stolen Ford Transit van after going AWOL. The Ministry of Defence vehicle, which had gone missing in 2022, was later found with a camp bed in the back, along with £18,000 comprising a mix of real and counterfeit money, a notebook, and other items. Khalife was spotted walking near a leisure centre in a town called Stone in Staffordshire. The police were called, and when he was located and his identity confirmed, Daniel Khalife was promptly arrested at the scene. It wasn't until the 27th of January 2023 that Daniel Khalife was formally charged with 3 offences. The first was sending information that might be useful to an enemy in breach of the Official Secrets Act, in other words, spying. The second was a terrorism charge related to eliciting personal information about the British Armed Forces, and the third was for perpetrating a bomb hoax. Daniel Khalife was then remanded to Wandsworth Prison to await trial. In May of 2023, he was discharged from the British Army. It seemed that the tale of the wannabe spy was coming to its logical end. However, Daniel Khalife was not done with his escapades and was about to set the front pages of the media ablaze. On the morning of Wednesday, the 6th of September 2023, Khalife began his day like any other inmate. He was escorted from his cell to the prison kitchen where his job was to assist in the preparation of food. The seemingly mundane routine masked Khalife's plans for that day, which were anything but ordinary. At approximately 7 a.m., as a food delivery truck arrived outside the prison kitchen, Khalife seized his opportunity. Having fashioned a makeshift sling using his kitchen trousers and some carabiners, he stealthily strapped himself to the underside of the truck. The truck driver frequently delivered food to the prison and thought it unusual that both kitchen doors were left open when he arrived. Dismissing this minor detail from his mind, the driver completed his delivery and returned to his truck to exit the prison grounds. Little did he know that he had a clandestine passenger clinging to a makeshift rope beneath his truck. As he waited to exit the main gate of the prison, the driver overheard security guards talking about a missing inmate. This notwithstanding, the guards performed only a cursory inspection of the truck before waving the driver through. He continued on his regular journey that morning until he received a frantic phone call from his boss telling him that it was believed a prisoner had escaped from Wandsworth. He was ordered to immediately return to the prison. Turning his vehicle around, the police then caught up with the driver on the South Circular in Putney. There, the truck was subjected to a thorough search by a contingent of officers, but the missing inmate was nowhere to be found. It was already too late. Khalife had made his move. A few minutes earlier, when the truck stopped at a pedestrian crossing on Trinity Road in Wandsworth, Khalife dropped to the ground, rolled to the side of the road, stood up, and calmly walked away as if nothing had happened. The escape, executed with an air of nonchalance, marked the beginning of Khalife's 4 days on the run. A witness driving behind the truck observed this unusual spectacle and reported it to the authorities. It was a full 8 minutes later that HMP Wandsworth was officially placed on lockdown as they searched for their missing inmate. The following days were marked by an intense nationwide manhunt, perhaps not seen since the escape many decades earlier of spy for the Soviet Union George Blake. British ports and airports were placed on high alert as authorities feared Khalife might attempt to flee the country bound for Iran. Khalife, however, didn't intend to make an immediate dash for it. He remained within the confines of West London, purchasing new clothes and a burner mobile phone, stealing a hat, and even pausing to browse news coverage of his own escape. The police thought they had nabbed their man when they detained someone waiting on a platform for a train. The unsuspecting man just so happened to be a lookalike. The poor chap was soon released, his train ticket being upgraded to first class for his troubles. Throughout his brief time on the run, Khalife regularly changed his appearance and clothing, using public transport to navigate the city. He contacted several people using a notebook he'd taken from his prison cell, including that of his Iranian handler. Whether Khalife had any concrete plans beyond evading the police is not clear. Inevitably, it seems, Khalife's bid for freedom finally came to an end. On the morning of the 9th of September 2023, the police received a tip-off that Khalife had been sighted in the Chiswick area of London. At 10:35 a.m., a plainclothes police officer driving an unmarked vehicle in the area received a radio transmission from a colleague who believed she had spotted Khalife cycling along the Grand Union Canal in Northolt. The officer swiftly drove ahead of Khalife, identifying a crossing point that would allow him to intercept the fugitive. Parking his car, the officer ran down an alleyway towards the canal. Positioning himself on a bridge overlooking the canal, the officer observed Khalife wearing the clothing described by his colleague. As Khalife approached the police officer on a bicycle, the officer made his move, running down the steps from the bridge, ordering Khalife to stop while drawing his taser and announcing himself as a police officer. Startled, Khalife attempted to flee. He quickly dismounted the bicycle and ran towards the towpath steps leading up to the bridge, hoping to escape his pursuer. The officer continued in hot pursuit. When he caught up with Khalife, a struggle ensued and the officer tackled Khalife to the ground. Once he was taken down, Khalife gave up his resistance, allowing the officer to restrain him with handcuffs. Additional officers soon arrived at the scene, formally arresting Khalife and securing the area. Khalife was taken immediately to Hammersmith Police Station, where he was booked and processed. Daniel Khalife's capture, facilitated by a combination of astute police work, public vigilance, and technological tracking, brought an end to his short-lived freedom. His escape, however, exposed glaring security lapses at HMP Wandsworth and raised serious questions about the ability of the prison system to effectively contain individuals deemed a potential threat to national security. With their prisoner back behind bars, the trial of Daniel Khalife began in the first week of August 2023 at Woolwich Crown Court. The prosecution's key argument was that Khalife betrayed his country by passing sensitive information to Iranian agents. They presented evidence, including messages, photographs, and witness testimonies, to show that Khalife collected and communicated information about the British Army, its personnel, and sensitive military equipment to individuals linked to Iranian intelligence. They argued that Khalife's actions were motivated by self-interest and that he showed little regard for the potential damage his actions could cause to national security and the safety of others. The defense argued that Khalife was not a traitor, but an amateur double agent who, although misguided, was in fact trying to serve British interests. They claimed that Khalife initiated contact with Iranian agents to expose them to British intelligence, and that the information he shared was either fake, useless, or already in the public domain. The defense described his double agent plot as hapless and sometimes bordering on the slapstick, being more akin to Scooby-Doo than James Bond or the TV series Homeland, which Khalife claimed had inspired his scheme. The defense highlighted Khalife's attempts to contact MI5 and MI6 to offer his services as a double agent as evidence of his true intentions. In his testimony, Khalife said emphatically, "I am a patriot. It's as straightforward as that. I cherish my country." Khalife said that his reasons for accepting money from the Iranians was twofold. Firstly, that he believed financial transactions would make him appear more legitimate and provide concrete evidence of Iranian intelligence activity in the UK, and secondly, to draw his handlers out into the open to gather intelligence on them. The prosecution's response to all this was to describe Khalife as having engaged in a cynical game. The self-reporting to MI5 and MI6, intended perhaps as a cover for his activities, ironically became the catalyst for the investigation that ultimately led to his downfall. The court heard that Khalife had created and passed on fake documents, supposedly from MPs, senior military officials, and the security services. However, he had also sent genuine army documents, including the list of Special Forces soldiers' names and personal details. After 23 hours of deliberation, the jury at Woolwich Crown Court reached their verdict on the 28th of November 2024. Daniel Khalife was found guilty of breaching the Official Secrets Act and the Terrorism Act. He was convicted of collecting secret information and passing it to Iranian agents while serving in the Royal Corps of Signals. Khalife was acquitted by the jury on the charge of perpetrating the bomb hoax due to a lack of concrete evidence. Earlier in the trial, Khalife had pleaded guilty to escaping from HMP Wandsworth. Sentencing was then adjourned until the new year to allow for a pre-sentencing report to be compiled. The judge in the matter, Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb, warned Khalife that he faces a lengthy sentence, stating, "It is a long custodial sentence that he is facing, and the more frank and straightforward he can be, the better." Daniel Khalife's sentencing has been scheduled for the 3rd of February 2025. He remains remanded in Belmarsh Prison, from which no inmate has ever escaped. Daniel Khalife's case exposed vulnerabilities in both the recruitment and vetting processes of the armed forces and the security of high-profile prisoners. Khalife's story that he was a British patriot serving his country's interests by conducting his own private double agent operation sounds paper-thin. In his own words, Daniel Khalife considers himself the smartest man in the room. It was perhaps this hubris that ultimately caught up with him. Whatever his true intentions may have been, it was an incredibly stupid game to be playing.